but like I was saying, there was imposter syndrome. Like there were startups that would come and you would tell them that, hey, I suggest you do this to get this, and it just felt wrong. Like I'm this nobody who has no business of doing this work, and I'm telling this founder to like reduce their cloud storage percentage by X by doing Y, because
But
I read this.
you haven't done it
I
yourself.
haven't done any of that myself, so just felt a little wrong. And the second thing was that I wanted to do this better, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something from the ground up. At that time, I started experimenting a little bit. Like this is the third time I tried to start up. Like it was just there as an itch. Got to a point where I thought, you know what, this is making sense. But I mean, I was working with someone at that point, but I dropped the idea like myself. That startup has become very big now. But at that time, I just went like, this is not for me. I'm not fit for it right now. I'm getting married. That was, I think, the bahana in my head. But ended up joining a pre-seed startup like Mamamco in the FMCG space.
Called Mamamco.
Yeah, Mamamco.
Right. How big was the team back then when you joined?
When I joined, it was like 14 people. At that time, I had another 2 offers to join like growth stage startups, but and like giving unreal money, but you also again start feeling a little bit that, oh, I'll be the first person to get fired, like literally, like because that's a feeling you get when if you're like the highest, you're one of the higher paid people. So, but I was like, you know what, I need to do something at bare bones level to learn. Joined this pre-seed startup. I think that's when we met as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like those first 3 to 6 months is where I learned everything I had to. Like that taught me everything I had to, because it put me in such situations where I think the one thing that teaches you the most is like decision making, like very quick decision making. And being in a very pre-seed startup, you have to take like very, very quick decisions. So I'll give you an example, which might seem trivial, but it's bigger in the larger scheme of things. So because we used to do packaged goods, truck comes to our colony, and we had a smaller warehouse. Truck comes to our colony, it's standing there. The driver calls and says that, you know what, I'm going to dispose of everything here if you don't give me 200 rupees. All is going to be on the road. In your head, you have to like calculate and think about it right there and there. That what do I do? It's like that kaun banega crorepati, 4 options. Do I talk to the driver, tell him that here's 200 rupees, argue? Third option, call the police or some shit. Anyway, fourth one, something else. So you got to take a decision right there and then. That gets cleared, comes to the guard. Guard is then like, okay, if you want me to help you, it'll cost 30 rupees per box to get this up there. So you got to take those very quick decisions, and you don't have anyone to like fall back on to ask. And this might seem small, but in the larger scheme of things, it makes a huge difference. I mean, I've had situations where we had packers, and they were packing very few boxes for the day. We were missing out on orders. So I would end up calculating, how much time does it take for you to pack one box? They're like 30 seconds. I'm like, okay, so by that calculation, you need to do 2 into 60, 120 boxes per hour. Classic consultant. And ended up thinking this would be it. But that number was
the reality is very different.
Reality is very different. They were like, sir, aap kaam karo na, aap packing karo ek baar. And they were like, hum nahi kar rahe, aap karo, baith ke. So I did it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not working out.
Right.
So that ground reality came from those 6 months itself.
Right.
I mean, a lot of mistakes, lots of learning.
And then you went on to
the parenting.
Parenting.
And that was by chance. Like, this is a firm which was talking to Mamamco for exports.
Yeah.
But while talking to them, they were like, we can evaluate you for an acquisition. That didn't work out, but they're like, you sound like a good dude. Let's get you on. So Roshni, the CEO, just told me, you know what, come on, hop on. We'll get this going. But while I was there,
and by then your experience largely in FMCG was sharpening.
In consumer, like I was always like consumer. I mean, I've always been very interested in consumer. Everything consumer. It started like very long back. I mean, I can get into that also.
Right.
But at that point, then joined them. I had to shift to Singapore, but I couldn't shift because COVID.
Yeah.
And I had a year to like just experiment on things while I was working full time. So at this point, I just started experimenting on a lot of things. And the reason why this time I was like sure about my capability was because I'd worked at 2 startups and I'd consulted with a lot of startups.
Right.
I started comparing my decisions with the founders I was working with, the CEOs that I was working with. And these decisions that I was making, like internally in my head and how they had played out, they seemed right.
Right.
So I think as a CEO or a founder, you make like 10 decisions in a day. Like all of them don't need to be right. But the
Right.
critical 5, critical 6 need to be
Right.
right. So I started comparing my decisions and I'm like,
Getting
it seems to me I'm doing something maybe better. I don't
Right.
want to badmouth them.
Right.
But it just, to me, just came like, I think I can do this.
Actually, that's an interesting one, right? Decision making, small, big, micro decisions, big decisions, is and getting that right or learning from the ones that you don't is what gets you sharper overall in your acumen to just keep moving forward, right? Like whether it is strategy or execution. I think that's very underrated. The ability to make choices is what defines a good or a bad founder or a CEO.
Yeah, 100%. Like the reason why public company CEOs are paid so much is because of those one or two decisions they make in a year.
Yeah.
That makes or breaks a stock
Yeah.
like to another level.
Yeah.
And if they get those wrong,
Yeah.
then it messes the whole thing up.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I did that for a year. For a year, I was just experimenting on a bunch of ideas.
Right.
And that's when I think we also reconnected
Right.
and started this whole thing that, you know what, I have to do this.